Hello, everyone. My name's Jeff, and I'm just an old guy that's in his 50s, and I like to talk about different perspectives of life and where I am and what goes to this old head of mine. And I was talking to my 16-year-old son the other day, and I was kind of talking about I said, son, do you know that I remember before there was internet that life was so much different then than it is now? And life was basically a whole lot simpler. And, getting on board with the fast pace of way life and stuff is now is not something I really enjoy, but you kind of have to go with it if you want to survive in a few things. But what I was talking to him about was the first big major thing that I remember happening, and things have never been quite the same since then, and that was Y2K, year 2000. The year that everything was going to shut down at midnight. People were kind of panicky about that. I won't never forget, I had some people over at my house that night, and we were playing games, doing our New Year's thing, and around 11:30, everybody wanted to go home. They had to leave, and me and my wife, that's before we had children, we was sitting there like, wow, we didn't prepare for anything. We was just enjoying life, and nothing happened. Well, we got up the next morning, we had power, running water, and the grocery stores were still open, and nothing really changed a whole lot. But it seems like to me that ever since that time happened, in the last, what year is this? 2025. The last 25 years, a lot has happened. A lot of different things have happened. 9/11 happened, and then, of course, we've had the shutdown with the corona thing and all these different things, and some of them I can't even have coming to my mind right now, but it's just crazy how things have changed that I've seen change in my life, and I'm not that old. 55 years old, I'm not that old. And I'm sure my parents and my grandparents, they probably felt the same way about different things that they seen happen. I know my grandparents lived, through the Depression and different things like that, and the things that they seen come along. But we live in a world today that can be very uncertain, very unnerving at times if we allow it to be. We can overthink things sometimes. And you see things out there blasted on the internet, that tries to absolutely scare you to death. And you can't worry about what you can't control. And, you can hoard food, you can do these different things. And I believe you should be well prepared for life, for sure. But how long can you store food for? I mean, there's just so much that you can do. You can just, how things set up to where you won't get as hungry as soon as other people would, I guess. But, we're one of the last generations, if you're, in your 50s and up, that remembers life before the internet and people in such a doggone hurry to get places. In a time when people helped people and cared about people and took care of one another. Pull over on the side of the road and, driver's side against driver's side, sitting on the old country road talking to one another. 5 or 6 guys sitting around, or standing around the back of a pickup truck propped up on it, talking and shooting the bull. But, today, people don't even know who their neighbor is. People pull in the garage and they shut the garage door and they go in the house. And it's just a different world that we live in, and I miss those days. you try to have those kind of times and relationships, and you try to explain, that to your kids, but, they haven't lived that. I remember growing up, we went to my grandmother's house. Granddad would go out to the field, and he'd pick a watermelon, and we'd cut a watermelon with his pocket knife, and we'd sit there and eat watermelon right there on the front porch and make homemade ice cream, hand-cranked homemade ice cream. And people would ride by, and you never knew who was going to stop by. I got old video back in the 80s where my uncle had built a wood splitter, and we was just out there splitting wood. And everybody, people would stop by, and they'd help split wood and talk a little bit and hang out a little while. Then, they'd move on down the road. Good times. It was nothing to have, 15, 20 people at my grandparents' house on Sunday afternoons just hanging out. And grandmother and granddaddy, they didn't have much money, but there was always food on the table. There was always something there for somebody to eat. Just good, wholesome times that we don't have in this country anymore and in this world. People are glued to their devices. And I'm not talking about just to gather information, useful stuff, or just scrolling to be scrolling. And it's an addiction. It's a hard thing to break. It's a hard thing not to get into. I mean, I catch myself all the time doing the same thing. But it was just something that me and my son were just talking about the other day. And, I believe you should live forward. I do. You can't live in the past. You can't go back and change anything. But there was a time when things were a lot simpler. I remember those times. I remember when you had to talk on the phone, it was connected to the wall. I remember when we had landline phones in the house, just not too many years ago. I remember when I was my dad's remote control and I had to go change the television. I remember when I had to go outside and turn the antenna for the 3 or 4 stations that we had to come into the house. Good days, good times, a lot simpler. I remember when you used to watch television, you didn't have a DVR. You had a VCR back in the 80s. But I do remember a time that if you didn't catch the episode on television, you had to wait till rerun season come around. If you went at home on Friday night at 8 o'clock to watch the Dukes of Hazzard, you didn't get to see it for a while till next Friday night, and you might miss a continued episode or whatever. Good times. Good times. I remember them well. I try to share some of those good times with my son. We went fishing this last Saturday, and we was sitting out there fishing. I told him, I said, son, when you're out here fishing, we was catching small brim. We wasn't catching nothing big. But we was out there fishing, just having a good time. And I told him, I said, son, when you're out here, there is nothing in this world matters right now. We're just enjoying one another's company. It's like everything else in the world is 100 miles away. And in my perspective of being in my 50s with that, I long for more of that time to figure out ways to just slow down more. Enjoy the moment that I'm in. You can be somewhere, and I'm just going to wind this up, but you can be somewhere with some people, but you can be so wound up and so tight that you're not there in the moment. Your mind's somewhere else. You're completely oblivious to what's really going on and not enjoying the people that you're with and the people that you're around. And that's a sad thing that we can do to the people that we love, and we can do to ourselves, because you can't get that back. Simpler times. Man. Simpler times. Oh, quit rambling. See y'all next time.